Today on Six String Philosophy, we are revisiting wonderful artist Bon Iver for the song Blood Bank. Previous episode, we did Skinny Love, which is also excellent. That first album, For Emma, Forever Ago, spawned both of these songs, except they held over Blood Bank for a 4-song EP afterwards. I guess they felt it was a little different in tone, a little different in arrangement. And the original one, I would say, kind of is Justin's answer to the Nebraska album by Bruce Springsteen. Basically living in seclusion with very minimal recording, and kind of parallels two stories pretty well. In Justin Vernon's case, basically his entire career grew out of that recording session, and so that set the tone, so to speak, for his style in the beginning of his career. He's expanded his sound quite a bit, but in the beginning it was a very stripped down, very independent, 4-track, minimalist kind of approach. That stark, pure sound that's not very overproduced, I think, lets the emotion come through. Here he is again. Nice part is, it's in standard tuning. So the song begins, E minor. There's different places you can play that, but I'll play it down here. Open E minor. The next one is a C shape, except you're going to be playing it a whole step up, and then you're going to take this ring finger, put it on the 5th fret of the A string, and then replace your ring finger with your pinky. So you get this special sound. If you play all the strings, kind of has some overtones in there. And I think, like most of his songs, you don't need to be too careful. It's not a precious picking pattern there. It's just keeps the rhythm. The one part about it in the execution is there's a lot of pickups, meaning the lyrics start before the chords. So, when the snow started falling, that's the secret of hitting it at the right time. And it happens for both halves of that progression. So we got the E minor, that D with an A in the bass, and then the same shape. Send that 2 frets south. That's the C with a G in the bass. Well, I met you in the bank. We were looking at the text. So I start that. We were looking at the before I get to the C. And I get the wonder if any of the colors. That line has to start early. Match the names we knew from the text. So I'm kind of talking over the changes there. Just be aware of that as you play through. And it's pretty much throughout the whole song. And that gives it a sense of pace and urgency, I think, which was a really great choice. The secret that you know. That's a little more loose in the timing. It kind of lets it strum and ring. I tend to keep gunning with my right hand there. And then D over F sharp. We know this one. It's a sound of a D and a sound of an F sharp. And it creates this little chromatic walk used in so many songs. It's a secret that you know. We don't know how to tell. D over F sharp. And it fucks with your teases your head back again to D over F sharp, and then open in E. Oh, it's good, cause it runs you red. And then it closes with that C. This also stays for the falsetto. Sub that in for the E minor, for the D, and the C. Just some other ideas. Okay, and then of course you have this minor bar chord, or minor 7 if you wanted to, on the 7th fret of the A string rooted there. what makes this song extra special, I think, is the lyrics. It's a bit of a puzzle. Blood bank, not a traditional romantic notion, I don't think, but there is a selflessness of donating blood. And I may be reading into it, but hey, that's what we do here. It's six-string philosophy. It reminds me of a scene from The Office, if you're an Office fan, where Michael Scott is at a blood drive, and he sits next to this, young lady, and they're hitting it off, and it's like the first time he's ever Mr. Smooth, and every joke lands perfectly, and he's kind of charming and everything like that. And so I think there may be something to that, of just noticing, as living beings, as people, we all have much more in common than not. So that's a kind of a pretty way to start a song that has sort of possibly an off-putting name. From there, I mean, the lyrics in the second verse are amazing. There's only so many ways you could work the sun and moon and stars into a song, but he does it in such a clever way where he lands, it starts off with the, when the snow started falling, so it creates a moment. We were stuck out in your car, on your first date, or whatever you want to call it, that first moment of, driving a bomb car around that's just dead in the snow. Rubbing both your hands almost sounds like a survival thing, but also, obviously, an intimate moment. And then from there, chewing on a candy bar, I think, is just such a goofy, almost Bob Dylan-esque way to end the line, like, this one's gonna rhyme, chewing on a candy bar, but also it's very plausible, and it does kind of sound like kind of a teenage, puppy love thing. So I guess it kind of like brings you back to a younger head. And then that waxing philosophical there, where in just like the present, to be showing up like this, and then there's a moon waning crescent. Love that. And then we started to kiss. So it frames this in such a way. It reminds me of Dan Fogelberg's tune "Same Old Lang Syne," where there's a part where he says, he sets up this whole story, which kind of sounds like this, not like a prosaic story of like small town. In that case, it's a guy bumping into his former sweetheart, and as opposed to this one, which is kind of like just a budding romance with a bittersweet tone to it. In that song, there's a moment where they step outside, and the snow turns into rain, and he just sets up this atmosphere of like what was beautiful, snowflakes setting a tone. Now all of a sudden, that romantic tone is just washed away with the rain.
It's secret that we know, we don't know how to tell. I'm in love with your honor, I'm in love with your cheeks. Once I know is up the stairs, babe. Is it Christmas morning creeps?
Christmas Morning Creeks. Kind of reminds me of climbing through the attic, setting up our kids' Christmas gifts, and coming down and thinking that they must be hearing me up above, and so that sound is special. I'm not sure exactly how he means it, but that's how I hear it. And so there's a lot of nostalgia in this one. It brings you back. So for those reasons, love this song. Hopefully you do too. Check it out. The playing is very doable, and definitely just singing it from the heart. Can't go too far wrong. So hope you had fun. See you on the next one.